Hi, everyone. We're going to get started. I want to welcome everyone to our Arts for the Animals panel discussion. I'm Jen, the director of VegFest. I'd also like to thank you for joining us for the 2021 virtual New England VegFest. Our festival kicked off this past Sunday. It has been an amazing week so far, and we have 2 days of activities left to go. Please check out our website at anyvegfest.org. We have lots of activities there. We have a plant-based pavilion and showcase and marketplace with discounts that are ending tomorrow, as well as a virtual scavenger hunt activity that's ending tomorrow, some vegan summer cooking demos, and then replays of all of our live activities that have happened so far. I also hope you can join us tomorrow at 12 p.m. EST for our Veg Friendly Speaker Showcase, which is bringing together speakers from across the country discussing topics of interest in plant-based living and animal advocacy. I want to take a quick moment. Sorry about that. I just want to take a quick moment. Event logistics. Our event is streaming at anyvegfest.org, as well as our Facebook page at facebook.com/anyvegfest. We have a lot of panelists, and we're not going to be able to take questions from the audience today. But if you do have any for the panelists, please send them to info@compassionarts.com, and we'll do our best to get them to the panelists and answer for you. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to my friend Ellie from Compassion Arts, who will tell a little bit about her organization and introduce the panel.
Thanks, Jen, and thank you to New England VegFest for inviting us to be part of your amazing festival. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Compassion Arts panel on the arts for animals. I'm going to read from my notes just to keep things moving along. But basically, my name is Ellie. I'm the founder of Compassion Arts. Compassion Arts is an all-volunteer arts and education initiative for cultivating understanding and compassion for animals and the earth. Before I introduce the panel, I'd like to open by sharing briefly about what Compassion Arts is and what we do. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations and with advocates to create programs briefly about what Compassion that raise awareness and what we do. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations and with advocates to create programs briefly about what Compassion that raise awareness and what we do. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations and with advocates. Jen? What we do. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations and with advocates. Oh boy, there happened like a psychedelic effect here. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations and with advocates. Oh boy, there happened like a psychedelic effect here. We are a collective that partners with nonprofit organizations. Okay, I'm going to continue talking. Sorry about that. Not sure what's going on with the, we're having a little difficulty here with a little technical difficulty here. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay. We're not a nonprofit and we don't accept donations, but we are 100% volunteer, and our programs are made possible by the artists and educators who presented our events. Last year, we transitioned to an online format, and so all of our programs are free. We wanted to share this panel for New England VegFest to help illustrate what the arts for animal advocacy is and how it can be an effective instrument for changing hearts and minds, in the hopes that people will consider using the arts for animal advocacy in their own organizations or in their work. Unlike raising awareness through presenting information, which is about explaining facts, and unlike traditional forms of protest that are about, sending a flare up to show we think something is wrong or that something is unjust, the arts have the unique and powerful ability to create an experience that sparks connection and empathy in the viewer to see from another's perspective. This is different from using the arts to express opinion. Most of us are not inspired to change because of someone else's opinion. Compassion Arts serves to be a bridge. We feel the most powerful change comes when the artist or educator breathes life into a story or into a moment to facilitate the viewer being able to embark on their own journey towards transformation. Compassion Art seeks to inspire such journeys of transformation by inspiring empathy for those who are outside of society's circle of compassion. Next slide. Our main event each year is an annual Compassion Arts Festival, which is now in its 7th year. The festival is a series of events over 10 days that show some of the ways that arts and creativity can be an instrument for advocacy for animals and for veganism. This is different from having events for veganism or animal rights where performers are sometimes brought in to play music in the background or to have artwork sold at an auction. And it is also different from many, well-known artists who engage in activism outside of their artistry, separate from their work. I consider that more like arts and animal advocacy, whereas what Compassion Arts does is arts for animal advocacy, where the programs are presented by people who are established in their creative fields and use their work as a voice for change. We also have workshops and programs for emerging artists as well. Our next festival will be November 14th online. It will go for 10 days, and it will feature all of the people on today's panel and many more. Next slide. The inspiration for Compassion Arts came from a grant I received many years ago from the Culture and Animals Foundation. They are a 25-year-old nonprofit founded by animal rights pioneer Tom Regan. I mentioned Culture and Animals because they were instrumental in helping the early beginnings of Compassion Arts, and also because a few of our speakers today have been Culture and Animals Foundation grant recipients. Also, if there are folks who are watching who want to use the arts for animals and are looking for ways to get projects off the ground, Culture and Animals offers multiple grants every spring. Their application is on their website, and the grant deadline is either the end of December or January. Next slide. The people speaking on today's panel are from different areas of the arts or education or both. Some have work that is focused solely on the animals, others on mostly veganism, and some on the intersection of how veganism is linked to our environment, social justice, and our well-being. Our moderator will be introducing the panel members to you in more detail, but on this poster, they are pictured clockwise, starting from the top left corner. Allison Argo, a filmmaker, Michael Harron, a multimedia performer and composer, Joanne Kong, an educator, concert pianist, and lecturer on vegan advocacy who uses arts in her work, Jane O'Hara, an artist and curator, Donald Vincent, a poet, educator, and vegan outreach creative, and our moderator, Alfie West. I'm going to speak a little bit about Alfie. Next slide. I think I have a slide for Alfie there. Yeah, there you go. So Alfie's our moderator, and then she's going to co-host with me on the question portion of the program. The speakers will each speak for about 10 minutes each and talk about their work. And then after each one has spoken about their work, we're going to go to questions that we'll ask each one of them a question, and then the panel will be allowed to share. So to start, I'm going to introduce Alfie. Alfie West has been with Compassion Arts since 2017 and is a part of the creative ensemble helping to showcase and develop some of our original music and performance projects. Alfie is a singer, performer, producer, and mini documentarian. She serves as the women's health specialist for the YWCA of Central Mass and works as a domestic violence prevention advocate, educating youth on healthy relationships. She is originally from Mississippi, but came to Massachusetts in 1994 to attend Berklee College of Music. She is a parent, partner, activist, and a vegan for 20 years. And with that, I will turn the program over to my Compassion Arts colleague and my friend, Alfie West.
Hello. Let's see. I'm not sure if we're going to have a delay problem with the camera on or off. Let's see what happens. I think that Ellie pretty much summed me up, and I really want to get to the panel. There's just so much that I want them to be able to share. Our first presenter and speaker, our first panelist, I should say, will be Allison Argo. Allison is a multiple Emmy Award-winning director, writer, editor, and producer of documentaries for deepening understanding and respect for animals. The founder of Argo Films, her intimate portraits of endangered and abused animals have been broadcast on PBS and National Geographic for 25 years, reaching audiences worldwide with their stories and receiving over 100 awards internationally. She is a Compassion Arts 2018 Artist for Ahimsa Award honoree for her work making films that serve as a voice for animals, and for dedicating her artistry and platform to humane education and raising awareness. Her most recent film, The Last Pig, is a moving and transformative story that follows the journey of a farmer's ethical crisis to align his values with his life and the animals in his care. The Last Pig documentary is currently being shown on PBS stations across the country. I had the pleasure of looking at Allison's work recently, and just the word brave came to mind. The way that she is that voice for the animals is just so clear and absolutely brave. So we welcome Allison.
Gosh, thank you so much. That's such a beautiful introduction. So are we all set to, should I be on camera or does it matter? I guess.
I don't hear a delay. It seems like we're good.
Okay. Well, Jen, if you're all set, I would like to let Ron make my opening remarks, because I think he will say it best. Ron lived in a research lab for about 30 years. No one knows how many for sure because the records are sketchy, of course. In one of the tests he endured, part of his perfectly healthy spine was removed. So what you're about to see is the first time in his life he's had the chance to feel the grass and the sun. Go ahead, Jen.
For 266 chimpanzees, a better life is drawing nearer. One of the new islands is almost complete.
We're putting this fire hose bridge out because we have some chimps that won't go out unless they have something to hold on to. They haven't been out on grass, so they're afraid to go out without touching something man-made.
Ron has spent his entire life in a small cage, most of it in solitary confinement. Concrete and steel are all he's known.
Did you copy that?
Yes, yeah.
Ron can't step beyond the concrete.
A door has been opened. That's the point. Tomorrow he may go in behind the mountain and I won't be able to find him at lunch. The tragedy would have been if he had been left behind.
So after watching that moment with Ron in just 2 minutes, you can see how sensitive he is. You get a sense of what he's been through and denied his entire life. You can understand his struggle. And I think once you've witnessed that story, it's impossible not to care about Ron and other chimps. That to me is the power of film. We give the audience a window into the lives of others who they'd never otherwise have a chance to meet or understand. I believe that all the arts are really important. We need them all to open our eyes and inspire us. But what moves one person might not move another. For some people, music, poetry, or a painting might have a more powerful impact. I myself was drawn to film because it allows me to share a story in detail. I love that I can elaborate on that story and even include some historical or political background, because this gives the viewer a deeper understanding of the issues. I like to believe in the innate goodness of humans, or at least most humans, but I think if people aren't aware of the issues, how can they make compassionate choices? I think film is a really great vehicle to get that information out there. I always try to personalize the non-humans in my film, so it's not just a group of Black furry chimpanzees in a cage. It is Ron. Non-humans are also are almost always my leading characters, but it's the humans who play the supporting roles. These humans are also really important because we get to see through their eyes. Through their concern, we gain an empathy for non-humans, and we're inspired to help right the injustices. I think it's really kind of magical. Most of the time while we're watching a film, we're unaware of the transformation that's happening within us. We're just watching an entertaining story. But by the end of the film, we have this whole new understanding. And a lot of the time, by the end of the film, we've become advocates. When taking on a new film, I choose a subject or issue that I feel needs public attention. Then I look for characters and stories to bring the issues to life. The following clip is an example. It's from a film I made about the tragedy facing parrots in captivity. These incredibly intelligent, social, long-lived animals absolutely suffer in cages. And thanks to the pet industry, hundreds and thousands are unwanted and fall through the cracks. Go ahead, Jen.
In a Boston suburb, a parrot has been left behind.
The family lost the home. The bank had taken possession, and I received a call. The bird had been left behind for approximately 4 days. It was 4 days since anyone had been last seen coming or going from the home. It did have water. It did not have bird food available. There was other pet food in the home. To just be left behind in a cage, it has to affect them. They're not stupid. I've heard the stories that these animals go through, and for me, it's utter heartbreak.
Did you give me a call earlier?
I did. It's been 3 or 4 days since I've seen anyone here, and I've heard some bird noises.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna go take a look and see if I see anything.
All right.
Guys, I just need you to stay outside if you don't mind for now.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
An umbrella cockatoo. Our favorite species.
It was the only animal we found in the house.
Oh, hey.
So you can take care of him for us, Mark?
No problem.
All right, thanks.
Bye, little guy.
This was a local story that happened an hour from where I live. I mean, there are stories like this unfolding every day all around us, but I was absolutely stunned to learn that no one had ever made a film about the plight of captive parrots. It was really desperately needed. I've also found in making films that history can be very moving. Seeing past injustices gives us perspective on where we are today, you know, how we arrived here and how things went so wrong. It also allows us to identify continued practices that we need to change. So here are 2 clips. This is the last clip, Jen, you can play it clear through. This is
For
from
over a century,
okay.
man trekked into the African rainforest, searching out one of his closest relatives. So similar to ourselves and yet so mysterious, gorillas were like magnets. Man found these animals irresistible. Entire families were often killed as they fought to protect their young. Thus sprang the myth of gorilla as savage beast, an image that was to shadow these gentle creatures for generations. Torn from their rainforest home, shipped to an urban world, and placed on display for man's amusement, this was the future for these young survivors.
When they were securely tied, we felt sorry for them. They looked so pitiful, and for a short time we really debated whether or not we would turn them loose. They did not realize it then, but they were just beginning a trip which took them halfway around the world. And I sincerely believe that they will live as long and as happily as they would in their native jungles.
For another gorilla, there has not yet been a happy ending. At the B&I shopping center, amidst cash registers and shopping carts, inside 2 concrete rooms and a trailer just beyond the sporting goods, lives a 400-pound silverback gorilla named Ivan. Ivan has been at the B&I for 24 years. Today, his owner, Ron Irwin, faces the dilemma of owning a solitary gorilla.
In about the mid-60s, we bought 2 gorillas from the Belgian Congo. There was a female and a male, and they were 6 months old when we got them. The female died from pneumonia, and Ivan we have had ever since. He lived with the people that owned the pet shop for about 4 years, and he just got too big to handle in a house. I guess the future of Ivan is probably here. We have been trying for about 12 to 15 years to get a female here, and that's just almost an impossibility to get a female.
A victim of circumstance, Ivan lives out his solitary days at the B&I, a sad reminder of a less enlightened era when gorillas were seen as nothing more than exotic attractions.
So that was 30 years ago, and perfectly legal. It was Ivan who actually inspired me to start making films. I felt that his story had to be shared, and no matter what, I had no money and I'd never been to film school or made a film, but I had an abundance of passion. And it took me 3 years, but I got the film onto the air along with a public service announcement for our newly formed Gorilla Relocation Fund. And so Ivan's story drew outrage. The store was picketed and donations rolled in to move Ivan. Within months, the store was bankrupt and Ivan was moved to Zoo Atlanta, where he was able to feel grass and meet other gorillas for the first time in 30 years. I mean, it wasn't the wild, but it was the next best thing. After witnessing this, the power of that film, I couldn't do anything else with my life. It's potentially so powerful. The biggest challenge these days is finding funding and also getting your film out there. But that's another story which we can go into later. But thank you.
Listen, that is so amazing. that result, I didn't know that part of the tale, that result, that Ivan was your inspiration and how the impact that the film had, oh wow.
Yeah.
There's something that I want to ask actually each panelist in due time. What do you do for self-care when you're taking this all in so deeply, and this suffering is happening, while you're doing your work. So, what do you do for self-care? How do you stop that compassion fatigue and
me, really?
Yes, you.
I once worked with a photographer, a still photographer, who was there at ground zero during 9/11. And in fact, he was crushed by a building, but he survived. And he said he was like an ambulance chaser. He could witness anything as long as he had the camera up to his eye. And the second he took it down, he was just horrified. I think you get so focused. And to me, my mantra is whatever, in this case, gorillas. I'm doing it for the gorillas. Every time I sort of lose my footing, get discouraged or get freaked out, it's just, I go back to the animal or the individual who I'm making the film about. But definitely by the end of my film, and each film takes me at least a year, if not 2, if not 5 to make, I'm a puddle on the floor, and I have to crawl into a cave for like 6 months and, refuel and feed my soul. So I guess that's my pattern.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for presenting it and for sharing that. Next, we have Michael Heron. He's a multimedia performer, musician, and composer. His work combines elements of classical composition with experimental electronics and storytelling to explore narratives that cultivate empathy and awareness about our connection with animals and that serve as an instrument for animal advocacy. He is an artist in residence at Tamerlane Farm Animal Sanctuary, where he created the solo multimedia theater piece, The Animal Show, which premiered in New York City in 2016 and continues to be performed in venues throughout the United States. He is a past Culture and Animals Foundation grant honoree and the author of The Animal Book. He's also an independent recording artist of several albums and creator and host of the podcast Mikey Pod. He's been with Compassion Arts since 2017. I've had the pleasure of meeting Michael, and it's good to see you again, fellow virtually. Please welcome Michael Heron.
Hi. I can't tell for sure if I'm on, but I think I am. Thanks so much for that. Okay, good. Thanks for that great intro, Alfie, and nice to see you and everyone on the panel, and thanks for having me on this. I want to talk about the Animal Show and how it came about. As Alfie mentioned in the intro, I did a multimedia performance called The Animal Show that I wrote while in residence at Tamerlane Farm Animal Sanctuary. I done only one other show like this where I combined storytelling and video and music and other musicians. And I finished what felt like the last performance of it, and I created a book and an album of the music. And I kind of was at this place, and that show didn't have anything to do with animals at all, really, although I interjected here and there that I was vegan. But I wanted to do something that had to do with animal rights. And I was really kind of stuck about how to do that in a way that didn't seem really forced. And I like doing this kind of memoir kind of work where I tell stories about my experiences. So I decided to create an experience that I would then write about. So I connected with Tamerlane Farm Animal Sanctuary, which at the time was a smallish place, and I thought of it as being like this weird little chicken place. But they were willing and to have me come and be a resident artist. And they asked what that was, and I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna come and visit as much as I can. So I went. And I just really acted like a volunteer. But I recorded. I brought my audio recorder and video camera, and I just documented the experience. And it became a performance about this like indoorsy kind of fussy guy that hates being in the weather, being out like taking care of animals and helping out with this stuff. And during the course of that year, I also did some more rescue work than I've ever done before, and I got more and more involved in activism. So I created this show, and I performed it at Dixon Place in New York City. Thanks, by the way, in part to grants from Culture and Animals Foundation, Veg Fund, and A Well-Fed World. I was able to fund the time that I needed, and also put this show up with an all-vegan string quartet and not yet vegan director, but I think he's still on his way to going vegan. So I did the show, and I did it for 2 nights in New York City, and then I decided to take it on tour. And what I learned from this experience, I think, is really important to talk about, and I kind of want to talk about my experience as an artist and how that affected my advocacy for animals. And the thing that was really interesting was that I could talk to people in my life who weren't already on board with the vegan message or with animal advocacy, and I would just be telling. I think of this moment when I was talking to an adult piano student of mine about being at an animal sanctuary, and I was talking about how calves are removed from their. I was talking about a cow that had been rescued from the dairy industry and how she was very motherly, and that it was probably because all of her babies had been taken away by the dairy industry. And I was just telling her in this matter-of-fact way, and her face like dropped, and she said, "What?" And I was able to advocate about veganism by just talking about an experience I had. That's what I think is really important about the arts, because it's a thing where people are showing up, people are coming to a show to hear the artist's perspective, and it gives us a chance to meet people when they're a little bit more open than you might at first expect. So when I was on tour, I have a clip that I want to show you. I did many residencies at different animal sanctuaries on the West Coast, and performed the show in different cities from Houston to Berkeley, Los Angeles, Portland, and in between, I just tried to get kind of involved in the vegan community in the surrounding area. And when I was in Los Angeles, I went to a slaughterhouse vigil at Farmer John's, I think it's called, with Los Angeles Animal Save, and I filmed the experience, and then I wrote a piece of music about it, and all of this footage sort of came together in what it was originally a live performance, but I turned it into a video. So it's the piece is called Their Eyes, and that was the most striking thing for me. We were greeting these trucks that were arriving at a slaughterhouse full of pigs, and I had always thought that their eyes, I would see these memes on Facebook of pictures people had taken at these vigils, and at first I always thought, like, why do they Photoshop their eyes to look so dramatic? They don't look realistic. I thought they were all like doctored photos, but then I saw these pigs in the trucks, and I realized that they weren't doctored. Like, this is what they really looked like, and there was really that much sadness and despair in their eyes. So I didn't mean to make it that heavy, but I guess it's something heavy. So I want to share that video. This is that all vegan string quartet. I'm playing the piano, and I programmed the electronics, and this is footage that I took at the vigil. Go ahead, Jen. and that's the video. I That's really all I had for everyone. Although I always want to share this message of this: if you have an idea about a new way or your way of sharing the message about veganism or whatever you're passionate about, run with it. Like, find a way to make it happen, and the path will be revealed. Thanks so much for letting me be a part of this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Do you want to take a moment to answer the same question that I posed to Allison about what do you do for self-care as well to keep yourself going?
Like the first thing that comes to mind for me, something that feels like the antidote is that, yeah, to experiencing something like that, being at the a vigil like that, or the different places we go where we really come face to face, or even just watching a documentary that like takes us face to face with what's happening to animals. Going to an animal sanctuary and seeing animals who have been rescued from that. This whole thing has me like super emotional for some reason, but that's the thing. Like, you can go see the faces of the individuals who made it out of that situation, and see people who are dedicating their lives to helping those animals. So that's what really helps me, and those kind of get through that.
Thank you. Let's see. Next, we have Joanne. We have Joanne Kong. Laughing at Michael's picture there. Let's see. Dr. Joanne Kong is an educator and acclaimed classical pianist, as well as a known advocate for plant source nutrition and vegan outreach. Her talks on compassion for animals and veganism are embraced worldwide, including her TEDx talk for the power of plant-based eating, which has been viewed over 900,000 times on YouTube and is on numerous websites internationally. She is the author of If You've Ever Loved an Animal, Go Vegan, and the editor of a new book, Vegan Voices, Essays by Inspiring Changemakers. Dr. Kong is profiled in the book Legends of Change, about vegan women who are changing the world. She also appears in 2 upcoming documentary films, Eating Our Way to Extinction and Taking Note, a film about vegan musicians. Recently, she has begun incorporating music, performance, and images with her talks to create a multi-arts experience that educates about animals and what we consume, to show how vegans make a difference. I was on Joanne's, Dr. Kong's website the other day, and just admiring that she really just like said, I'm going to do this because this needs to be done. And then it just seems like, and then she did it, to help vegans share their stories. And it seems like, like such a simple thing, such a powerful thing. And I really admire that. Please welcome Dr. Joanne Kong.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Alfie and Manda and Jen with New England Veg Fest, and Ellie Sarti as well. It's great to join everyone on this panel. I am a classical pianist and also a professor at the University of Richmond. And in my path, both as a vegan advocate and an educator, what stands out for me is that arts as advocacy is a way to expand the reach of our message. As Ellie mentioned, people are receptive to different things. It could be factual information on an intellectual level, or what they feel, see, hear, read, listen to, or watch. In other words, the arts offer different sensory pathways that make an impact, and often it's on an emotional level that can be really powerful. I was doing a little research, And psychologists point out that the decisions we make are not based purely on intellect or reason, rather they're based on our emotions. In other words, we actually tend to feel first and think second. And apparently the brain processes emotional responses 5 times faster than cognitive ones. An example of my work is a presentation. It's really too lengthy to show any of it today, but it's called The Act of Courageous Compassion That Can Heal Our World. And it was actually featured in a previous year of Compassion Arts Festival, and it's on YouTube. It was a presentation I gave at NAF's Summerfest, so I hope you can check it out there. Being a concertizing pianist, of course, this past year, a lot of my engagements got canceled. And what better time to write a book, right? So I actually put a book project together. And this book is called Vegan Voices, Essays by Inspiring Change Makers. It's being published by Lantern Publishing and Media, and it has 50 writers from around the globe. And this to me was a chance to really highlight what artists are doing, because one chapter is titled The Arts. So the writers here include Jeff Adams, an amazing videographer and founder of Vegan Linked, Allison Argo, right here on our panel today, Thomas Wade Jackson, whose new documentary, Compassion in Action, is coming out next year, Joanne MacArthur, who so many of us know. In the book, she writes about how animal photojournalism brings to light the plight of animals. There's Ryan Phillips of Artfully Vegan, who also runs Life with Pigs Sanctuary. In his essay, he points out how while it's easy for people to block out information, they tend to open up more when they experience the message through the arts. And there's a powerful essay by Kit Jagoda from River's Wish Animal Sanctuary. She and her husband are amazing. They are both educators and artists, and they have found super creative ways to reach out to the public through the arts. They have a yearly Art for the Animals fundraising auction. It's actually, I think, their largest source of income during the year. And at the same time, it highlights and supports local artists. And they have art and animal art workshops for students, and these take place at the sanctuary. So this is a marvelous opportunity to promote empathy, compassion, and creativity all at the same time. Other writers in this book include amazing vocalist Farah Siraj, whose work around the world as a vocal artist points out the intersections between animal rights and human rights, and also pianist Will Tuttle. And Dr. Tuttle beautifully sums up in my book how for him, creativity and veganism are connected. He writes, quote, "All three, veganism, spirituality, and music, are rooted in practice. They all require us to cultivate a certain discipline of both body and mind, and are potentially open-ended adventures into ever greater awareness, creativity, fulfillment, and liberation," unquote. So all of these individuals in the artist chapter of the book and all of us on the panel today, I think, represent the great diversity of paths for artists to advocate for animals. And I like to take a broader view that you don't have to be a professional artist to make a difference. There's this saying, and I'm not sure where it originated, but it goes something like this. It says, "Your life is your biggest work of art." And that's so true. And with that, there's also a quote by Helen Berry, which I just love. She says, "Never, ever let someone else hold your paintbrush." So I want to speak a little bit about my own personal journey and how it affected me on my vegan path, because it's really a great example of how culture shaped my life, and unknowingly, it actually was connected to a certain aspect of art. And in part, this has to do with one of my current projects, writing a chapter for a book by activist Hope Bohanek on the subject of the humane hoax. So what I've been realizing and thinking a lot about is about one way in which exploitation of animals actually uses the idea of art as a way of distancing consumers from the cruelty of the animal agriculture industry, and that's through the culinary arts. So the reason it ties in with my own personal journey is that I look at my family history, which includes a preoccupation with culinary excellence. And it goes way back to my great-grandfather in China. He was super wealthy, but he had an extravagant lifestyle. And growing up, I would hear stories all the time from my dad. He talks about how his grandfather was a gourmet. He loved to entertain his friends with a huge feast. He had this amazingly huge kitchen with many live-in chefs and cooks. But there was this preoccupation not only with the quality of the food, but how it was presented. He goes into more detail to talk about a certain recipe for snake stew. And of course, I'm not going to go into all the horrible details about how the dish was prepared. But after a very lengthy and intricate preparation, the stew was topped and beautifully, artistically decorated with chrysanthemum petals when served. So my great-grandfather, he even had a chef whose specialty was actually making stuffed bean sprouts, if you can imagine that. So fast forward, my dad's sister, Pearl Chen, was a top chef in Hong Kong, author of many cookbooks, and growing up as a child, our family was always filled with admiration for all of her culinary creations and painstaking recipes, many of them involving animals and animal products. Certainly, this is not about blaming or judging my wonderful family. It's about how my own perceptions grew and changed over the years. As I, really reflect on all of this, it just shows how much most of society has their blinders on to how we exploit non-human animals. The celebration of these foods and their desirability disguises the immense cruelty that lies behind them. It's a false representation of food as art, as if it's supposed to be valued. But we know that it's anything but. So think about how any animal suffered to become food on someone's plate, or the violence behind what we perceive as specialty foods like foie gras, shark fin soup, and so on. So looking back, I do feel a sense of shame that as a young person, I simply didn't have the awareness I should have had. I didn't decide to leave animals off of my plate until I was in grad school. So certainly not going vegan sooner is probably the biggest regret in my life. But that is a regret that's shared by many. For example, most of the authors in this book, and it points out the persistence of cultural conditioning in our lives. That's why everything we do to get the message out through the arts and so many other avenues of advocacy is going to make a difference. Just so you know, the book is now available for pre-order, and there will be more announcements coming out about some launch events. And I want to mention that a portion of the proceeds for this book are going to support the Porchlight Animal Sanctuary that's here in my hometown of Richmond, Virginia. So thanks so much for listening and tuning in today.
Thank you so much, Joanne. And as I said before, like it seems so simple, and you just bring it to the world. You just have this clarity, like, yeah, this is the truth. We're going to share it. And I see that in everything that you shared today. Yeah, it's just beautiful. Thank you. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to move on to Jane. Jane O'Hara, artist, is a painter and curator whose work explores our complex relationship with animals. Her work has been shown in numerous galleries and exhibits, both in solo exhibitions and group shows. She is the curator of the Beasts of Burden group exhibit, which has exhibited in galleries in Massachusetts and New York, and is the author of its accompanying Beasts of Burden gallery book. She's a past recipient of the Peace Abbey's Courage of Conscience Award. She is also a Culture and Animals Foundation Grand honoree and has represented or has presented programs on art and animals for Mr. Art Museum, Symphony Space in New York City, and Pace University. Jane has been with Compassion Arts since 2015 and is a co-curator of the 5th Trust exhibit for the upcoming Compassion Arts Festival this November. She is currently in the midst of a wide-ranging project, a series called State of the Union, to exhibit at the New Bedford Art Museum in 2023. Jane, I just want to take a moment to just say how powerful your paintings are and the messages within, and just say thank you. Please welcome Jane O'Hara.
Hi, wow, thank you, Alfie. Jen, if you could start the slideshow, that would be great. This is my painting listening. I always liked to paint and draw ever since I was a kid. I went to art school after high school, but it wasn't until I met my future husband in my 30s that I got back to painting. I'd pushed aside. I began to paint, insert animals into my paintings, and yet I wasn't focused on animal issues at the time. I was mostly unaware, so I painted the humor I saw in animals and their beauty. Next slide. But looking back, I had some dark humor creeping in, like about the vulnerability of these dogs, 2 dogs sleeping. These island stray dogs never completely at rest as their ears are alert even in sleep. Next slide. Or in slightly concerned. Next slide. Here's a straight up celebration of a cute and confused lamb in Where's Bee? Next slide. And here in this commission, Lily comes, Lily goes, Lily listens, Lily knows. I used multiple frames to try and capture this sweet, well-loved Labrador. Next slide. In Papaya, I used the pedestal to point out this hairless Chinese crested dog's vulnerability and its uniqueness. Next. I was beginning to learn about animals behind the scenes, and my curiosity had me dig deeper. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was learning. So when I saw the Byzantium exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum, the idea for sacrifice came to me. In sacrifice, these animals sacrifice their lives to a higher power, just as saints had in the show, but in their case, of course, not a choice. In their case, not sacrifice to God, but to corporations, universities, and circuses. The idea to paint this nagged at me, never having done anything like this until I finally gave in. It was the act of painting sacrifice that further brought me into the animal's world of pain. I was now seeing that my artwork could be used to expose, to speak for those that couldn't. Ideas began to flood in. Next. The beagle is often used in testing because of its trusting and docile personality, then euthanized. Here comes back. Here he comes back in The Messenger. Next. This is Bubbles series, Separate, Not Equal. I found I needed to communicate this world, this view of the world I was gaining, the world where these separate animals' realities casually floated by the other, a pampered pet living the life in its cozy bed with toys next to a chimp stolen from his family, forced to entertain and rewarded like a convict with a cigarette. A pig at its birthday party, drifting near a pig in a gestation crate, barely able to move her own body. More and more, the situations animals find themselves in, so random, from gilded cages to restraints and abuse, from sanctuaries and pockets of the wild to lives removed from anything natural, be it family, sun, grass, or freedom of any kind. Next. In Lion King, the king of the jungle is reduced to a shadow. The reputation of the fierce beast is advertised at this zoo, exhibited in the clothing of the people, with sports teams named to embody this animal power, furs donned, animal ears on furry hats, selfies taken with the lion in the background. But is anyone seeing this lion? Is anybody learning anything about this lion, as we're told zoos are there to help us do? Why do we think a lion in a cage has anything to teach us except that we, as humans, have the right to capture and cage any animal being that we like? The lion looks out depressed. I try to look through his eyes in this painting to imagine his world. Next page, please. In haves and have-nots, the random luck of an eager dog may be called Scout, ready for rides in the car, or the bad luck of the dog whose tattooed ear tells her name, BH112, her life in a cage, allowed out only to be used for painful testing. Next. In Back to the Future, where a hopeful future, mother cows are allowed to nurse and love their babies as it once was in the past, before we decided that milk was for us, not the baby calves. Next. Sometimes I use cartoon images integrated into our pop consciousness, like Homer Simpson in "Oh, That's a Cute Piggy." Homer is oblivious in his delight in encountering this pig while he holds his bacon dripping hot dog. Beasts of Burden is an exhibition I curate to include a group of animal-inspired artists with the goal to show how completely integrated animals are into our lives. The exhibition showed twice, first time in the Boston area at Harvard Education Portal, and the next time to align with the Culture and Animals and Compassion Arts Festival in New York City. And I used a grant from the Culture and Animals Foundation for a book cataloging the second Beasts of Burden exhibition. I believe that the arts are a perfect way. I just realized I could stop this dinging. Sorry. As a perfect way to examine our complex relationship with animals. With the visual language of composition, color, and subject matter, we can translate visually the awe-inspiring and the senseless or absurd and skip right past people's preconceived ideas. Another way to get the work out there is with presentations like I am here. And thanks to Ellie Sarte with Compassion Arts for contacting me to do just that years ago at the Worcester Art Museum for the first Compassion Arts Festival. Since then, I have worked with Compassion Arts in a variety of ways as we are aligned in our mission to open eyes and hearts with the arts to be compassionate to animals. Next, please. I've completed several paintings to be given as Ahimsa Awards for Compassion Arts, one for the fabulous Allison Argo, who we just saw, and with the last picture here awarded to Joanne MacArthur for her powerful, brave work as a photojournalist with an artistic eye, communicating these animals' lives behind the scenes. This time the animals are running free and therefore called The Last Picture Necessary. Next, please. In the midst of this pandemic, last fall, Compassion Arts Festival went virtual, and I ventured into the new area of creating a virtual exhibition, Forget Me Not, based on this painting, which is created as a floor mat. As the animals look up and plead to not be forgotten, they are more likely to be walked over. The exhibit was of my own paintings, and now this year I'm co-curating the exhibition, The Fifth Trust, with artist Janelle O'Rourke. The theme of that Compassion Arts Festival is based on the book, The 10 Trusts by Mark Beckhoff and Jane Goodall. Each day of the festival is dedicated to one of the 10 trusts, and our show is the fifth trust, Be Wise Stewards of Life on Earth. So Janelle and I join these artists with some of our work that embodies this trust. Next. A year ago, Reagan Russell was at a pig vigil in Canada where she was run over and killed by a transport truck filled with the pigs she was there to say goodbye to. I did this painting in honor of this amazing human, so dedicated and filled with compassion. One way I try to give thanks and get the word out is to give artwork to those who are on the front lines helping these poor animals, as Reagan was. In this case, I had prints made for Reagan's family, fellow animal advocates who were mourning her, and friends. Next, please. A project I'm in the midst of, I call State of the Union. I came up with this idea to use imagery in the background that state would like you to see, but in Bubbles, I have some behind the scenes look at animals of that state, things that are not so idyllic for those animals. Here in Florida, Mickey Mouse holding the state flag, a Florida beach with alligator, free dolphins, oranges, blossoms, and palm trees, a state animal of panther. But in Bubbles, the captive dolphin, a bear hunt orphaning many cubs, the exposed abuse at Larson Dairy, the monkeys raised at primate products for experimentation, and manatees and fish as victims of red tide. Next, please. In California, I depict the hidden animals in the bubbles. I show animal activists trying to save a downed calf and arrested for grand larceny. The captive orcas of SeaWorld, the transport truck of pigs to the fancifully painted slaughterhouse, the fires of California, the infant monkey deaths of monkeys used in animal experimentation at UC Davis, and the multiple deaths of racehorses at Santa Anita Raceway. These worlds float over the stylized images of California. Minnie Mouse holds the state flag with a bear as symbol, flag waving over the bear, the state animal near the Hollywood sign. Next. Massachusetts State of the Union contains idealistic and iconic images in the background. The Boston Terrier leaps over Fenway Park, New England Old Windmill, Cape Cod imagery, while in the bubbles, darker things occur in Massachusetts. In this painting, there are lobsters boiled alive, mice tested on at Elm Hill, deer targeted at Blue Hills Reservation, shark killing tournaments, and beagles experimented on at Charles River Lab. Next. In Hawaii, surfers surf, gigantic waves, hula dancers dance. The Pearl Harbor Memorial exists alongside the state animals, humpback whale and seal, the hibiscus state flower. In Bubbles, a darker side exists for animals, fish, and fowl. Cockfighters are raised and trafficked to Guam, longline fisheries and their bycatch, aquaculture, fish farms, abusement parks and hotels where dolphins are exploited and live in confinement, and the cruel dairy industry. Here, an environmental problem as well, with waste and using much of the water supply. All 50 states will be exhibited at the New Bedford Art Museum, June 2023. I look forward to the fact that this fantastic art museum is going to show this work. And beyond the New Bedford Art Museum show, I hope to travel the exhibition. And I also am toying with the idea of having, seeing if I can get this made into a book. So fingers crossed. And thank you so much for letting me join this great group and wonderful festival.
Thank you so much, Jane. Okay.
You're
next-
muted.
I am? I'm muted? You can't hear me?
You're good, Alfie.
Okay, all right. Not sure what happened there. Technical difficulties. Next, we have Donald Vincent. Donald, also known as Mr. Hip. Oh, can you, let's see. Jane, you're okay? Let's see.
Yep, you're good, Alfie.
Oh, okay. Jane was saying she couldn't hear me. And actually, Jane, I don't think you heard me say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Donald Vincent, also known as Mr. Hip, is a poet, educator, musician, and founder of Le Pamplemousse, a digital platform dedicated to spreading the awareness of vegan companies. He is the author of Convenient Amnesia, an acclaimed poetry work on race and social justice. He is also the creator of That's So Vegan, a visual project merging creativity and education on plant-based foods and uplifting information on vegan lifestyles. A past Culture and Animals Foundation grant honoree, Donald is also the creator and producer of the hip-hop album Vegan Paradise. He has been with Compassion Arts since 2016 and has been a presenter or host of a wide range of events and programs for several past Compassion Arts festivals. He was a community outreach coordinator for PEN America, organizing press freedom events. And he is currently a teacher of writing programs at UCLA and Emerson College in Los Angeles. Please welcome Mr. Hip himself, Donald Vincent.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. I am going to withhold my presentation. Part of the work that I do is storytelling, so I would like to just sit and talk with you all. I'll share some of my work with everyone. Just want to say thank you to everybody that is watching this or that will see this in the future. And also want to say thank you to the previous panelists that have spoken, shared their work. I'm always overjoyed and always just in awe to see the work that you all constantly do and to see how you all are, again, just perfecting your crafts over time. So it's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. I want to talk a little bit about when I first went vegan, just for context of some of the work that I'll be sharing today. When I first went vegan, it was mostly just a decision that I wanted to do financially, living on my own and grocery shopping, purchasing certain items like organic meat or, all of those things, humane meat, and those catchy kind of trendy health phrases was really expensive. So when I just decided to say, hey, I'm going to cut this out of my diet, and I didn't know what that would entail, but it required a lot of education on my end, a lot of learning about just nutrition and particular things to eat. So when I went vegan, a lot of folks said, oh, you won't be able to do this, you can't do this. And so it was online where I found a community of people that were supportive and that did tell me I could do it. After a couple of failed, failing, because in order to become a better cook, I always suggest you fail. After failing for a couple of recipes, I think it began to come together and in trying different food and within trying different food, meeting other vegans in person, doing different demonstrations and listening to what people had to say about animals and how animals don't have a voice and they are people that don't have a voice. And part of that intersected with my beliefs and how I look at racial relations here kind of in the country, in the United States. And so really looking at the dynamics of oppression for marginalized voices and those that can't speak, I really took to the message of veganism and being a spokesperson for those that do not have a voice. While looking at the perfect platform for this. I'm a poet by heart. And so I really love the use of words and how words can really take us to a particular place. Ricardo Blanca, the poet laureate, not poet laureate, but the inaugural poet for President Obama, said that art has gone where no politician has ever gone before. And if we think about how art is constantly helping us redefine stereotypes, redefine different narratives, and the importance of the written work and visual artists, I arrived at writing more and more about my experiences. So as this poet, also someone that created hip hop music, a lot of my interactions were with non-vegans. And so how do I communicate something that's important to me, whether it be the climate, whether it be making sure you're getting the nutritional value from your food, whatever it may be. And that outlet just happened to be music. And so creating music was a way for me to reach particular audiences. And then even today, it's, you know, one of those fulfilling experiences where someone will be humming a particular song or thinking about vegan music and sending it my way. So I wanted to share one of the first kind of things that I wrote in regards to being vegan. And this came from a song by Biggie Smalls called What's Beef? Where I'm from, beef is when you do not like someone and you do not get along. However, when I look at what's beef today and revisiting that, it's a very kind of interesting and dynamic relationship. So this is one of the first pieces that I ended up writing regarding going into being vegan and actually implementing some of the vegan principles in my own art. It's Mr. Hip, y'all. I don't eat meat, so don't ask me about beef. I'm all about compassion and peace. Factory farms pollute the atmosphere with dangerous gases, and the climate keep adapting or changing. That meat you eat got mad antibodies. We ain't omnivores, you can tell from the teeth. Mama, look at how they slaughter baby calves. Don't bother, mama. Cows can't even get milk to their daughters, and this a ritual and unethical. Too many reasons to go vegan. It's not a mystery. The meat market is misery and sort of scary. We the only animal to drink another animal's dairy. Have you seen the videos? The way they slit their necks. It gotta get better. That's just food for thought. I ain't gonna preach about leather. Get you together. It's bad for the environment. Don't forget to take your B12 vitamins. Don't increase your chances of cancer. I'm not a scientist. Too many hormones in your beef. Give it up. You know what time it is. I can't eat murdered animals. It's still violence. I'm just here to enlighten. What's beef? Gluten-free pea protein. What's beef? Chorizo style ground tofurkey. What's beef? Beef is when you eat animals, guaranteed to be in ICU. One more time, what's beef? Gluten-free pea protein, what's beef? Chorizo style ground tofurkey, what's beef? Beef is when you eat animals, guaranteed to be in ICU. There'll be nothing but tofu. I won't eat nothing that goes poo. There'll be nothing but Satan. I can't eat nothing that's breathing. There'll be nothing but temper. I don't eat nothing that's living. You can eat all sorts of food. Meat increases the swings in your mood. There'll be nothing but tofu. I won't eat nothing that goes poop. So even being able to record this in the studio around a lot of different mindsets and people that were firm on eating meat, whether it be paleo, keto, whatever the new diet phrase is, I think a lot of people were, a lot of eyebrows were raised, and I caught a lot of folks off guard. But I do think that while people do continue to still eat what they eat when they're around me, they know that that's not respectful and courteous of my own principles. And so it does begin to change behaviors. And so I'm all about making sure that the written word is there to help change our narrative, to help educate, to help inspire. And so it's through the written format and through storytelling that I'm really excited to just share my work and share my message about uplifting and empowering those that are not heard. Thank you for joining all of us today. And I'm gonna swing things over back to Alfie.
Okay, thank you, Donald. I had the pleasure of being on your website the other day, and oh my gosh, convenient amnesia is wow. I encourage everyone to check that out, to go online and look it up, buy the book, read some of the poems. It's really, really real, and it's really incredible, and just I don't even have words yet, but I've shared it with others, and just thank you. Just thank you for being here, and thank you for your work. Let's move on to Q&A. Ellie's gonna pose a question.
I'm terrified to speak because of the what happened in the beginning. So I might stop my video, but
you're good for now. I think you fixed it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much. What an amazing. Yeah, you can all stay on the gallery. Thank you for this amazing presentation. It's like so moving and so powerful, and thank you for your power of example. And I love what everyone shared, especially to people watching. If you feel something you want to communicate through the arts, if you want to explore different ways of using the arts as an advocate, just do it, and it will find its way. So we're going to go. I know we're running a little over time. So what I want to ask is if we can ask, we have these selected questions. If we can ask each person their question, and then after everyone's had a chance to answer, then we can open it up to the panel after we've gone through all the I feel like I'm going to talk a game show. After we've gone through the 6 questions, then we can open it up to the panel. So my first question is actually for Allison, which you touched on briefly in your presentation. And oh my God, your documentaries are incredible. So how do you fund your work? And I have a double question, which is, does the nature of funding vary for projects that depend on what type of animals? Since people might be more willing to fund a project about, say, cats or dogs, and maybe not willing to fund a project about, food animals. So I'm curious about how do you fund your work?
Well, that's absolutely true. My very first film, which was the Urban Gorilla, it was called, I funded with my own money, and brought it to a fine cut, and then National Geographic saw it and wanted to pick it up, and so I finished it under their roof. And I had sort of discovered a different way of telling stories, because I didn't go to film school. I didn't know how you were supposed to tell a story, which I think, in many ways, artistic ignorance is actually a wonderful thing, because you find your own way. But I discovered after that so I kept working with National Geographic and also the Nature series, and they would fund, I would say, 1 in 3 of the films that I suggested, because it had to fit in, the yellow box. And the other thing is that there was a while there where conservation was like a dirty word. They didn't want anything with a conservation message. People don't want to hear about that. And now, of course, everybody, it's back in vogue. Everybody wants conservation messages. So in terms of trying to find total funding and someone to distribute your film, you do have to jump into boxes and through hoops. And so with The Last Pig, I didn't have time, frankly, to look for funding, but I also wanted the freedom of just making the film that I thought needed to be made. And so that's why I made that comment at the end of my talk, that getting your film out there and funding your film is a whole another story. I was lucky, I have wonderful angels who supported a crowdfunding campaign. Joe, the photographer, and myself, we worked for free, and I'm still working for free, 6 years later. But I also got some small grants. So that's how I've cobbled it together. But then now that the platforms, think about it. When I started making film, the internet didn't exist. It's insane what's happened. And then suddenly Netflix came on the scene, and they would take anything. And now they don't take it much at all, because, they want original productions. And so the ground is shifting beneath our feet, those of us who are making films. And I imagine that the music industry is much the same, where it's just like a new frontier and trying to figure it out and how to get your film out there. It's really costly. It takes a lot of time and resources. And I've been going at a snail's pace because it's only me, basically. I don't have the money to pay someone else. So it's something I haven't yet figured out. And, the key word is sustainability. How do you make your art sustainable? How do you pay your rent and feed yourself? Even if you become vegan for financial reasons, like Donald did, you still have to buy your food. How do you do that and still be an artist? And thank God we have some really compassionate vegans who have money and are supportive. But finding those people, your champions, is really key, and it's hard.
Mm-hmm. And your devotion to your work in spite of those obstacles is really, it's really inspiring. And thank God for your commitment.
I can't not do it. I mean, that's the thing. It's almost like I'm an addict. So, but it's a little better than drugs. So anyway, thank you.
I just want to say, a friend of mine is a brilliant songwriter. His name is E.C. Lorick. He's an animal advocate and a vegan. And he has a lyric that says, we have had a vision, we have heard a call, even if we wanted to, we couldn't stop it all. And it's called Strandings. That's what reminds me of. So.
I think everybody here would agree with that. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody. You're such an inspiration. I love this group, and thanks for inviting me.
I mean, Allison, you had an opportunity to see your power. Like, you can't not use it now. You just can't.
Exactly. Well, yeah, when I saw Ivan walk on the grass for the first time, it's like, how could I do anything else with my life once you see what's possible?
Yeah.
It's empowering, I guess.
I have a question for Michael. You ready? Since veganism and animal rights is embraced by a relative small part of the population, how do you get your work out to the people? Like, how do you find places or create ways to show your work to the vegan community and outside of it?
I think it's a good question, because it's something that I also am like figuring out. I think social media has been really good for me in a lot of ways. And I was one of those people I was on LiveJournal. I don't know if anyone here knows of it. It was like pre-MySpace. It was like the first blogging software. And I would go and like make these long posts about way too much information. I was in my 20s, I guess, maybe early 30s. But so I like learned how to kind of build communities of friends in that way, which really helped. And the first show that I did was not about animal rights. It was more of it was a show about intimacy and grief, and I learned how to reach out to various different communities in that world. I think that I had a publicist for the one rare time that I could afford one, who really helped me like look at my work and pick things out of it. Like that show, she said, "Hey, there's a part in this show about grief. Let's find some blogs about people who are dealing with grief." And the grief was about my mom who had cancer. So there are other ways to so I think it's about a lot of ways connecting with other people and bringing them to my work has to do with finding connections. And even like I'm a part of a solo performer Facebook group. And I just make an effort to try to be involved and helpful in these online communities. So when it's my turn to say, "Hey everyone, I have a show coming up," they're more likely to notice and not think of it as like spam. I don't know if that even answers the question, but that's that's where I went with that.
I hope that we can one day see the animal show on, film. Your play.
Yeah. There's one video of it, of the very first performance I did in New York. and I was freaked out, sick, and like it's a really great film of a not great performance. So I never really show it to anyone, but maybe one day.
I mean, that you're, it's hard to tell by just watching the video, but before I ask Joanne, I just want to say the first time I saw Their Eyes, you were performing it live with the Vegan String Quartet, and the image of the screen was very large behind you with those imagery and with you playing the piano in front, and you told a story, in advance of playing, of showing the video, and it's so very, very powerful, and I'm glad we showed the whole thing. So
yeah, I'm glad that you thought so. That I'm glad that it was good to show the whole thing, and that was the very first time I performed. I wrote the piece to perform at that event, and then I put it in the animal show. So that was the first time I had incorporated video, and there was a lot happening that I didn't know if it would work, and it did. So I was happy for that opportunity.
It's really so amazing. All right, I'm going to move along to Joanne. Sorry. So my question for Joanne is, what is it about the arts that helps to convey the messages of veganism and animal rights? Although you kind of talked about that in your talk. And how do you incorporate the arts into your talks?
So for me, the arts are so powerful because they convey our messages in a very direct and intense way. And when you're thinking about music in particular, the thing about music is that it exists beyond language, right, or words. So it surpasses any limitations with different culture. It doesn't rely on specific words or more limited or narrow means of communication. So as a musician, I like to think that I'm creating a special acoustical space for listeners. And in that space, music allows people to have an emotional response. It really draws them to their inner reactions, the core of their feelings and sensitivity. And of course, I felt that immediately with Michael's music, just the tragedy and intensity of what's happening to those animals. And I was also at Farmer John, I don't think the same time you were, Michael, but that music actually brought me back to what I felt when I was at that vigil in Los Angeles. So when you think about how a lot of the public experiences art, whether it's going to a concert, a performance event, or visiting an art gallery, it's really an opportunity to put yourself in an environment that's different from everyday life. It's a chance to retreat from the distractions and the overstimulation that's a part of our external lives. And it's sort of like we allow ourselves to come into this quieter, reflective space. I like to think of it like a nature walk through your soul's landscape. You really kind of get to reconnect with yourself. So what I do in my own events is I'll alternate performance of piano music with messaging, which could be quotes or images or video. And the music that I choose reflects and amplifies upon that message. And I'll be doing that in the upcoming Compassion Arts Festival, where my husband, pianist vegan Paul Hansen, we're putting together a presentation for the second trust, which is Respect All Life. And I also want to point out that even if I'm performing as a pianist or I'm performing chamber music with fellow musicians, even if those events are not directly connected to vegan or animal advocacy, I like to think that for listeners, just the act of their being in that space and listening expands their capabilities to feel greater sensitivity and feeling. And hopefully that will lead them down the path to widen their circle of compassion to other beings. So music is so powerful, and I'm so glad to have that role.
Sorry, thank you so much. I thank you. And thank you for mentioning the festival. I almost forgot. It's going to be an incredible video piece with two pianos and imagery, beautiful photographs from We Animals Media, and then your incredible insights and powerful words. I'll turn over to Alfie again.
Yes, I have a question for Jane. Hi again.
Hi.
What inspires you to do a project? Do you create art like based on an issue you want to address, or is it based on individual animals or something else? Like after seeing all your paintings, some of them look so personal, like the boy's bullet. Like what what inspires you?
I would say all of the above. I'm inspired in a lot of different ways. As I talked about in my experience of the idea for sacrifice coming to me, I was obviously inspired at the Byzantium exhibition. That was a pretty clear-cut one and probably memorable to me because I did not want this inspiration. I didn't want to do this painting. It wasn't anything I had ever done before. So, but I get ideas from, social media, following sanctuaries. The artwork of other artists. Many of you here have inspired me very much. And, reading about what goes on out there. The more I read, the more my mind just sort of naturally goes into how can I creatively figure a way to kind of portray this situation. You brought up a boy's bullet. That was actually, and I guess this would be an inspiration as well at times. A particular show for Arts Worcester is a gallery space that I'm involved with, and they were using pictures from their collection that we were to use as inspiration and do something ourselves. And that was Edgerton's bullet. Now I'm gonna mangle it because I wasn't prepared for this. Bullet Through Apple, I believe it's called, very famous image of the photograph of the apple with the bullet going through. And so I just got this idea based on that. I used the coloration from the photograph, and the head of this boy is, been penetrated by this cruel notion of hunting as a toddler, basically, and yet confused by wanting to please his parent, and I guess I have to hold the idea that maybe he really did enjoy it. But anyway, I think that let me see, when I read about a calf being ripped away from its mother on day one, my mind just very spontaneously starts looking for images. And I do Google images a lot, just especially for this State of the Union series, in order to get reference material for what I'm working on. I'm constantly Googling and learning a lot about what goes on, much more than I even knew already, which I feel like I know a lot about already what's going on. And so it's been pretty horrifying. As far as that series, State of the Union, I have no idea where that idea came from. I've been asked that several times, and sometimes I sit there and think, what was I thinking? I am a person who tends to jump in the deep end and then figure out how to swim. So, I sat up one night and realized, okay, if I'm to complete this series by June 2023, I need to do a painting every 19 days. So anyway, I'm sure that answered your question in part.
Thank you.
I'm going to jump in and thank you. I'm going to just jump in, and then after I ask Donald, we can open up to the panel. And before I ask Donald his question, I do want to say, like, if you please check out his book, Convenient Amnesia. It's so poignant and powerful, and really intense and beautiful storytelling through poetry. So Donald, my question to you is, how do you use your work to reach people who don't want to be open to things like veganism, which you kind of talked about when in your talk, or who don't want to be open to anti-racism or social change, or who don't see the connection between all of these things? Is this something you factor in to your work when you're doing a project, or is it something that just comes about like through your creative process?
Thank you, Ellie. I think for me, my work and my creative process is one. Like, I am my work almost. You know, I believe in what I am making through my art. When it comes to reaching people who are not interested in animal activism or animal advocacy for that, just, you know, better speaking, and racial issues, I think for me, I don't create my work for them. Like, again, I create it for numero uno. There's always something narcissistic about being a creative. And so I do create my work in hopes that they will somehow stumble upon it, or they will somehow come across it. You know, when we talk about race, some places in our country, we can't even have those conversations in a classroom. I've had colleagues who got fired from higher education just for teaching or mentioning things about race. And so I always look at it as it will come to those. It might be another pandemic. It may need to be another police shooting. I do think people find the information when they're looking for it, but they'll also be able to find that and become better people. Everyone has their own journey. So I created first and foremost for me, and then for the folks that, you know, have read my work and it has changed their perspective on things. It's all about where people are in their journey. So making sure it doesn't shut those people out, but making sure it's accessible, and you can create a dialogue and conversation around the work. So that's my goal in creating a lot of the written work that I do.
That's what I love about your work, actually, is that it really, I mean, even when it's like really difficult to hear, it's still so, there's so much love in it, and it's so inclusive, really brings everyone in. So I'm gonna turn it back over to Alfie, and we got like a little bit of time to ask the final question to the whole panel.
I have one more posed question that I want to give to Allison. Actually, I really want you to answer this one. What gives you hope for the future, and what role do you see the arts playing in helping to advance social change, compassion for animals, and plant-based living?
Wow. I am hopeful for the future in terms of us getting to a new level of kindness and compassion for non-human beings. And I think because we sort of have this three-pronged, where it's sort of this point where we're coming from environmental disaster, you know, that's a good reason to leave meat off your plate. Health, it's now been proven that you're much healthier without eating bacon, et cetera. And we're starting to expose the reality of factory farms. I mean, there are a lot of people who close their eyes, but I think I think we are going to get to a tipping point where it's just like, you know, there are too many alternatives not, you know, to eat meat. You don't have to eat meat. So I'm encouraged by that. I think for me, the thing that concerns me the most is the polarization in our society. I don't know how we're going. It seems like we've become more and more polarized, and everything becomes political, you know, right down to whether you're vaccinated or not. And God knows what you eat or what you don't eat is, you know, that's potentially polarizing as much as anything. So that's, I mean, I do think the arts, I think the arts can bridge a lot of gaps. How do we reach people who, you know, we're white and they're black. They're white and we're black. I don't know. We're just at such opposite ends. And I'd love to hear I'd love to hear what how Donald would answer that, because it's not literally about black and white, but it's extremes. You know, we're just living in such an extreme society right now, and that worries me.
Yeah, I feel that too.
Mm.
Donald, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't think I understand like polarization and things of that nature, but I don't look at it as we are different sides, like extremes, like black and white. I never really look at it like that. I do think that we all are biologically like the same. But when we look at visual representation, there comes this lot of like, mythical like beings and mythical creatures, when again at the end of the day I think we're all the same, and I think through like visual representation we're beginning to see how that changes. If we look at how, because we talk about the arts, one of the first films to be screened at the White House was Birth of a Nation, and we look at how that has set up a lot of the representation of particular people who have darker skin. And so that's why it seems like we're on this different side of the spectrum, because of what we've been fed as a culture. But I do think that as we begin to break down those barriers and we have to unlearn a lot of the things that we've learned culturally, when we are able to unlearn those things and say, wow, you know what, maybe this isn't what this is, you're able to bridge those gaps. I think a lot of the reason why we have gaps is a lack of understanding and a lack of access to information.
Yeah.
Joanne.
Joanne, I'm glad your hand is raised, because I was about to call on you. I definitely want to hear about what gives you hope, and of course anything else that you wanted to say.
I just wanted to say what Donald was just saying is so true. You know, this idea of the polarization and the separateness. What's wonderful about the arts is that it really calls our attention to the things that connect us. You know, when we're talking about anti-racism, social change, we as artists have the capability to create that sense of connection, because whether you're doing it for the animals, we want people to be more unified and less polarization. It's about identifying that thread, that line of compassion that joins and connects us all. So I think seeing veganism as not this separate small movement, but it's part of this whole journey, right? This whole evolution that humanity wants to take. And I wanted to be sure to tell a little story. I was on the campus of Colby College a couple of summers ago, and you probably know of Sherry Rabinowitz, the video artist, and she had an installation, and it was just fabulous because it was just one of her statements, and it goes like this. It says, artists need to create on the same scale that society has the capacity to destroy. And that really shows the power that we have as artists to really create positive change in the world with everything.
Yeah. Does anyone else have something on the tip of their tongue that they wanted to share about any of the questions, or any other comments or thoughts?
I want to make sure that Michael and Jane get a chance to share on that. I know we're really running late, but oh well. Time is an illusion, according to Einstein. So
I don't want to have to cut us off. I'm not sure what.
I know it's like, so yeah, I just want to give Michael and Jane a quick opportunity to answer that as well before we sign off. Michael, I guess.
I can be quick. We're answering the question about hope, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of things people have said already, and seeing people in action, like in action, not in action, people who are doing action, like the people on this panel, people who organize events like this, people who rescue animals, activists, all of us who, I mean, seeing other people who must have some kind of hope because they're doing something gives me hope too. That's what I got.
Nice.
Thank you.
I have a lot of hope. I mean, do I get discouraged? big time. I mean, it is frightening, you know, all the polarization, as you mentioned, Allison. But I have a lot of hope, and just from my own experience of seeing some hearts and eyes opened in the smallest scale of my own work, or sharing other works by you folks and others, I really have witnessed people changing, you know, some more dramatically than others, but I feel an opening. And I feel it's a time, I feel like we're in that time. And whenever there's a time of big, huge, hopeful change, I think you also see the biggest resistance. So that's where I try to remember that when I'm in the fear state. But I do have hope. Thank you.
That means it's working, right?
Right.
I'm going to just jump in because I know we're towards the end. Alfie, thank you so much. Everyone's been amazing. And yes, I agree that I think that during times of awakening and times of change, that's when the resistance is perhaps the greatest. And I think it really is a time of incredible possibility and awakening. And that's where I feel like the arts are like this super highway for social change. I feel like with the arts, you know, so much is possible. And so I just want to close and thank everyone for participating today and sharing about your incredible work. And what gives me hope are the stories and narratives. I mean, is all of you and your work and the stories and narratives of animals, human and non-human, and how they and we continue to just keep moving forward. There's a quote, I'm going to quote from a book called Animals as Teachers. And she says, animals are our teachers and healers. In their innocence and wisdom, they offer us a way back to a home that they have never left. So with that, I'm going to close with that.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great way to conclude, Ellie. We do have to wrap this up, but I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Ellie, for all your work putting this great panel together, as well as everything you do with Compassion Arts, and Alfie for leading us through the panel today. And of course, thank you to all of our panelists, Allison, Michael, Joanne, Jane, and Donald. It was just an amazing experience learning about how you all use your artistic talents to advocate for animals. And for anyone who wants to learn more about the panelists, I'm sure you can find them online, but you can also go to anyvedfest.org where we'll have more information. So thank you, everyone.